Welcome back to The Truth of Money, where we follow the money to find the truth the mainstream media won't tell you. December 19th, 2025. 4:17 a.m. A conference room in Brussels. No windows. Recycled air. 19 hours of screaming. The most powerful people in Europe are about to make a decision that will define the next decade. On the table, $105 billion of Russian money. Frozen. Waiting. Ready to fund Ukraine's defense. Outside of the cameras are rolling. The world expects an announcement. The headlines are already written. EU seizes Russian assets. Moscow will pay for the war. But something just happened in that room. Something that will never appear in any official transcript. The German chancellor just received a text message. 4 words. Euroclear. $229 billion. Checkmate. 15 minutes later, the deal is dead. Instead of taking Russia's money, Europe will borrow $90 billion from you, European taxpayers, your debt, your interest payments. The media will tell you it was about legal complexities. They're lying. What actually happened in that room was a masterclass in financial warfare. Russia didn't fire a single missile. They didn't send a single soldier, they sent a lawsuit. And with that lawsuit, they held a gun to the head of the entire European economy. This is the story of the heist that never happened, and why the world's most powerful financial weapon isn't a bomb. It's a Belgian company you've never heard of. Let me show you the crime scene. Right now, as you watch this video, $260 billion of Russian money is frozen across the Western world. But here's what they don't tell you. 73% of it, $191 billion, isn't spread out across America, London, Paris. It's all in one place, Belgium. And it's not in a bank. It's inside something called Euroclear. Now, I need you to understand what Euroclear actually is, because this is where the entire plan falls apart. Euroclear is not a bank. It's the plumbing. When a German pension fund buys a French government bond, Euroclear is the invisible hand that moves the ownership. When an Italian bank sells a Spanish stock, Euroclear settles the transaction. They hold $37 trillion in assets. They process transactions in 90 countries. If Euroclear stops working for 48 hours, the European financial system collapses. Not has a bad day, collapses. Germany can't sell bonds. France can't refinance debt. The euro seizes up like an engine without oil. And right now, Russia's $191 billion is sitting inside this machine. Here's the beautiful part, from Europe's perspective. These aren't just frozen assets. They're bonds that have matured. When a bond matures, it pays out cash. But sanctions mean Euroclear can't send that cash back to Moscow. So it just piles up, earning interest. By late 2025, this trapped cash has generated $7 billion in profit. Ursula von der Leyen sees this and has what she thinks is a genius idea. This isn't Russia's money anymore. This is interest, windfall profit. Let's use it to back a massive loan for Ukraine. We'll leverage the interest to borrow $105 billion. Russia pays for the war. We look like heroes. The European Commission starts drafting legislation. The media starts celebrating. Ukraine prepares to receive the biggest aid package in history. And in Moscow, they start smiling. Because they've been waiting for exactly this moment. December 12th, 2025. 1 week before the Brussels summit. The Russian central bank walks into a Moscow arbitration court and files a lawsuit. Defendant, Euroclear. Claim amount, 18 trillion rubles. That's $229 billion. Now, you're thinking, so what? A Russian court has no power in Belgium. You're right, but here's what you're missing. Euroclear isn't just in Belgium. Western banks still have $180 billion stuck inside Russia, frozen in what are called Type C accounts. Deutsche Bank, UniCredit, Societe Generale, Raiffeisen. Their money. Trapped in Moscow. Russia's legal argument is brutally simple. You're holding our money. You refuse to return it. Under international law, that's default. We're suing you for breach of contract. And when we win this case in our court, we won't go after your headquarters in Brussels. We'll seize the $180 billion of Western money sitting right here in Moscow to satisfy the judgment. Do you see it now? If Europe takes Russia's $105 billion, Russia takes Europe's $180 billion. But it gets worse. Because Euroclear doesn't just hold Russian assets and Western assets, Euroclear is the counterparty to almost every major financial institution in Europe. If a Russian court declares Euroclear insolvent, even if it's a bogus ruling, it triggers something called cross-default clauses. Thousands of contracts across Europe start failing simultaneously. Credit default swaps activate, margin calls cascade, repo markets freeze. The 2008 financial crisis was triggered by Lehman Brothers, a company worth $600 billion. Euroclear holds $37 trillion. This is the neutron bomb of financial warfare. This isn't new. 1956. Suez Crisis. Britain and France invade Egypt. America wants to stop them but doesn't want to use military force. What does Eisenhower do? He makes one phone call. Stop Federal Reserve operations supporting the British pound. Within 72 hours, the British pound starts collapsing. Britain declares a ceasefire. The greatest empire in world history brought to its knees by a currency attack. And that was 1956. Systems were independent. Today, Euroclear holds $37 trillion. Everything is connected. Russia has a weapon 100 times more powerful. Russia doesn't need to win the case. They just need to file it. The threat alone is enough. Now we need to talk about the man nobody saw coming. Bart de Wever, Prime Minister of Belgium. For months, he's been quiet. Belgium is a small country. They usually follow Germany and France. But as December approaches, de Wever realizes something. The European Commission wants to seize Russian assets. Great, heroic, moral. But those assets are in Belgium. If Russia sues, they sue Belgium. If Russia retaliates, they retaliate against Belgium. If Euroclear collapses, it collapses in Belgium. Belgium would absorb 100% of the risk while 26 other countries take the credit. In the closed-door meetings, de Wever puts his cards on the table. You want to jump? Fine. Give me a parachute. He demands an ironclad indemnity, a legal guarantee. Germany, France, Italy, all of them, must sign a contract promising that if Russia bankrupts Euroclear, they will cover Belgium's losses. The room goes silent. Because here's the thing about solidarity. Everyone loves it until someone asks them to sign a check. Germany's finance minister starts hedging. We need to study the legal framework. France talks about fiscal responsibility. Italy just says no. Giorgia Meloni stands up and drops the hammer. Italian banks have $24 billion stuck in Russia. UniCredit alone has $18 billion. If we proceed with this, Russia doesn't just destroy Euroclear. They seize Italian bank assets to pay the judgment. This loan will be paid for by Italian pensioners who own UniCredit stock. I will not sacrifice Italian savings for a press release. And just like that, the coalition fractures. But even if they'd agreed, there was one more problem. The European Central Bank. Christine Lagarde sends a confidential memo to the summit. The content leaks days later. The ECB refuses to provide a liquidity backstop. Here's why that matters. The euro is the world's second reserve currency. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Brazil, they hold hundreds of billions in euros because they believe one thing. Property rights are sacred in Europe. If the EU seizes sovereign assets, even Russian assets, it sends a signal to every central bank on Earth. Your money is safe here until we decide it isn't. Lagarde's warning is stark. If we do this, we will trigger capital flight. Central banks will dump euros and buy gold, yuan, dollars. Borrowing costs for European governments will spike. Inflation returns. The euro crashes. This is not a political decision. This is an existential threat to the currency. And then she adds the killing blow. The ECB will not print money to save Euroclear if this goes wrong. Why is the ECB saying this? Because it's happened before. 1998. Long-term capital management. You've never heard of it, have you? Exactly why. A $4.6 billion hedge fund, run by Nobel Prize-winning economists. It's failing, and it has $1 trillion in positions. What does the Federal Reserve do? Locks 14 banks in a room. Bail out LTCM or you all go down together. Banks are forced to pay $3.6 billion. System survives. But this time, the ECB is saying we're not coming into that room. If Euroclear fails, it fails. Without the ECB's safety net, the plan is impossible. You can't gamble the entire European financial system on a political gesture. There's one more player in this story. He's not at the summit. He's 4,000 miles away, but everyone in that room is thinking about him. Donald Trump. Throughout late 2025, Trump's transition team has been sending quiet messages to European capitals. The message is very different from Biden's administration. Don't seize the assets. Why? Because Trump's team sees those frozen $260 billion as a negotiating chip. Their plan to end the war requires leverage over Putin. If the money is gone, spent on weapons, there's nothing to offer Russia in a peace deal. But if the money is frozen, Trump can dangle it. Ceasefire in exchange for unfreezing your reserves. Seizing the assets burns the leverage. And Europe knows, in 2 months, Trump controls NATO. He controls American defense commitments. He controls whether European security exists. No European leader wants to make an enemy of Trump in his first month. So they wait, they hesitate. And that hesitation is fatal. But wait, there's one more thing. A 36-year-old treaty that nobody remembered existed. The Soviet Union and Belgium sign a bilateral investment treaty, standard Cold War diplomacy. The treaty says, investments made by one country and the other are protected. No expropriation without compensation. When the USSR collapsed, Russia inherited this treaty. It's still active. A law firm, Covington and Burling, digs this up and circulates a white paper among EU leaders. Their conclusion? If Belgium allows the use of these assets, Russia can sue Belgium in neutral international arbitration courts. Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, and Russia will win. Belgium will be ordered to pay damages, enforceable globally. Russian lawyers could seize Belgian state assets anywhere on Earth. Ships, planes, diplomatic accounts, embassy properties. This is the final nail. Belgium faces a $229 billion Russian lawsuit, potential Euroclear bankruptcy, ECB refusal to help a 1989 treaty landmine Trump's pressure. At 4:17 a.m., the decision is made. When the doors open, the narrative has completely changed. The reparations loan is dead. Instead, Europe announces a $90 billion joint borrowing package. They will issue EU bonds. Borrow from the markets. European taxpayers will pay the interest. To save face, they agree to keep Russian assets frozen indefinitely. Previously, sanctions were renewed every 6 months. Now they're frozen until Russia pays reparations. They kick the can down the road. The headlines scream, unity, support for Ukraine. But read between the lines, Russia successfully deterred the West. Their $229 billion threat worked. They proved their integration into global finance is still too deep to cut without catastrophic consequences. Here's what they'll never teach you in economics class. We like to believe politics controls finance, that leaders can simply decree outcomes. But this crisis proved the opposite. Finance controls politics. In 1971, another leader learned the same lesson. Richard Nixon, most powerful man in the world. But when France started demanding gold, when reserves at Fort Knox started evaporating, Nixon had 2 choices: defend the gold standard and crash the economy, or unilaterally end a 200-year system. He went on television and severed the dollar-gold link. The world's most powerful leader bowed to financial reality. European leaders did the same in 2025. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The structural integrity of the banking system, the legal sanctity of contracts, the fear of market collapse, these things overruled moral outrage. The EU looked into the abyss. They saw the $229 billion lawsuit. They saw the risk to the euro. They saw the 1989 treaty, and they blinked. They chose to tax their own citizens rather than break the rules of global capitalism. Because the system is designed to protect itself, the assets remain frozen. The war continues. But the ledgers stay balanced. This is financial warfare in the 21st century. No tanks, no missiles, just lawyers, treaties, and the threat of cascading defaults. Russia didn't win by being stronger. They won by being tangled deeper into the system than anyone realized. And that, more than any weapon, is the true power in the modern world. The revolution will not be financed by seized assets. It will be financed, as always, by debt. If this is the kind of analysis you want more of, the stories that never make mainstream news, the financial warfare happening in the shadows, this channel breaks it down every week. Next week, how China is building a parallel financial system that could replace SWIFT in 10 years. Hit subscribe, you'll want to see that one.